Where are we and what are we looking at?
Well, first off, my name is James Trotta-Bono, and we are at El Museo Cultural in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And we are about to have a tour of the exhibition looking forward through the past contemporary Native American art. So the exhibition begins over here as you walk in the doors. As you walk in the doors, you're greeted by this large-scale mixed media painting by artist Geraldine Montano. Geraldine is Pueblo Comanche and Navajo, along with a few other nationalities. And this powerful piece describes identity, it describes resilience. This figure here is atop a pile of apples. And as Geraldine described to me, apples are a derogatory term for an urban native, someone who's red on the outside but white on the inside. And so here we have this beautiful winged figure rising above that, rising above the bullshit, rising above the racism, rising above the prejudice. She's calm, she's stoic, but close to her bosom is a fierce bear. She's also fierce. So this piece is really about rising above a lot of things that are encountered in everyday life. And I see that really as where contemporary art is going, is talking about important issues. I'd like to begin the exhibition because it is a survey exhibition among the 20th and 21st century of Native American artists. So we want to begin with a little bit more about the philosophy and where some of this is actually stemming from. And so here is a piece by artist Thomas Begay Jr., and it's a Navajo creation story. And in the creation story, there's 5 levels. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And it really has to do with animals and plants, and has to do with mythology around, you know, mosquito people coming through one level and into the next, and the birds flying in. And then here in this centered 4th area is all the known world. We have dancers, we have plants, we have the 4 sacred directions with the 4 sacred mountains. We have structure where people would live. And then we have flying shamans who are able to then commune with the upper world, where the deities are, and the thunderbirds. And so this is important because most, if not all, indigenous cultures are cultures that believe in animism. And animism believes that everything is imbued with spirit. Doesn't matter if it's a rock on the ground, something we're eating, you or I, or the air we breathe. It all has spirit. And so it's all sacred. And so all these artists we're going to be talking about and looking at, they really are stemming and pulling from this beautiful source, creativity, mythology, philosophy, religion, and then they're using their own voices to then articulate something significant for themselves, and I believe significant for everyone. We're going to continue the exhibition with these next 2 walls, and they have to do with Indian school painting. Indian school painting is a style of painting that was in the early 20th century to the mid 20th century. It's a 2-dimensional style of painting. And here we have beautiful horses, and horses are an important culture within Native American people. And this is done by Pop Jali. She was a very famous artist in the early and mid 20th century. And then below it is an artist named Donita Peña. And Donita Peña's depiction here is an everyday scene. It's a scene of 2 women baking bread. And I think everyday scenes dance. This is an artist named Stephen Mopop. It was done in 1930. And if you come in real close, you're actually going to see something that's just really alive. It's a 2-dimensional painting, but this artist is depicting an eagle dancer, and he looks like he's mid-flight. And to be able to depict that on a 2-dimensional scene is really quite a bit of talent. Here, an artist named Pablita Velarde, she's the most famous of the Indian school painters, and Diane O'Leary. Again, everyday life, these 2 women are pulling up teepees. And here, this artist, Pablita Velarde, she's talking about a ceremony, and this is a basket dance. And my favorite artist is Valjean Hesse. Here, she's my favorite because she's talking about social and political issues of the times. Valjean is just, she's just amazing. This is titled Waiting for Land Assignment 1900. And here are 19 men and 1 woman, and they're all looking a little lost. And they're wearing Western attire, and they're literally waiting for land to be given back to them that was already taken from them. And then we continue the exhibition into this kind of transitional area. Here is an artist named Dennis Numkena. He was an architect and artist. He also had the first native architecture firm, and he's a spectacular figure in art history. Here he's depicting a kiva. A kiva is a ceremonial structure where you would go down the ladder, and in the heart of the kiva is where Hopi clansmen would do ceremony, and they would deal with all the matters of the tribe, anything important where they would have to commune and gather. And so here we have an architect using an architect mind. We have someone who's well studied, so he's thinking about modernism, and traditionalism, because he's coming from strong roots. And I like to think of this piece as Hopi futurism. It's one of my favorite pieces in the exhibition. We're going to continue. I actually was just with Rhonda Holy Bear at Indian Market at the Plaza about an hour and a half ago. And that was really cool because I admire her work a lot, so it was nice to meet her. And this entire exhibition actually is because of Indian Market. Indian Market is done by SWAI, the Southwestern Indian Art Institute, and it's the 100th anniversary. So it's a really special time to be here in Santa Fe right now because there's a lot of activity, and it's incredible amounts of talent and creativity all around right now. And so this is a work by an artist named Helen Hardin. Helen was the daughter of Indian school painter Pablo de Velarde, and she's really well celebrated here in Santa Fe. And if you see behind here, you have geometrics. And those geometrics have to do with Hohokam pottery, with Mimbres pottery, and then you have dancing figures here. So she's really paying homage to her ancestors and to Southwest and to the past, but she's doing it in a very modern way. And just, I really adore her work. Over here we have an artist named Dan Naminga. And Dan Naminga is an abstract artist here in Santa Fe. He's Hopi. And so here, this is just a beautiful color-filled landscape. And you can see this depiction and delineation of a mesa. The sunset, the mesa, shadow, the foreground. It's just a beautiful painting. And I'll talk a little bit about where he learned some of his skills from in about 30 seconds. But before we go there, I want to talk about Oscar Howe and George Morrison. I consider these two artists to be the most influential artists of the 20th century. Oscar Howe was an Indian school painter, and then he moved on and went on and evolved his ability to become a painter that did something like this. And in 1958, he submitted a painting to the Philbrook Museum. There's an invitational, and the judges said, "We can't accept this, this is not Native American painting." He said, "Screw you, I'm a Native American artist, don't you tell me what Native American painting is." And really, that was a seminal moment in the 20th century for contemporary Native American artists, because he gave a lot of freedom to the artists that go beyond him, and a lot of inspiration. There's currently a retrospective at the Smithsonian Custom House in New York City that will blow your mind. If you are in New York, you have to go. It'll be a touring retrospective for the next 2 years. This is an artist named George Morrison. He was an abstract expressionist. He died in 2000, but he was working with Franz Kline and all the other abstract expressionists in New York City at the time, and he's just really well revered. This is one of my favorite artists. This is artist Tony Abeda. Tony is just all about lyricism. He's all about his tradition, but also modernism and contemporary practices, and also helping others. He mentors a ton of people. He is just a really beautiful soul, and he's just an extraordinary artist. He's all about sharing culture, bringing people up, spreading the word. He curates. He came out of he graduated from the Institute of American Indian Art, IAIA, here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And IAIA is a very important institution here in New Mexico, in Santa Fe. It was co-founded by this artist, Lloyd Kiva-New. Lloyd Kiva-New, he hired the first 3 teachers, Alan Hauser, Neil Parsons, and Fritz Scholder. Those first 3 teachers, they taught some of the early students. Glenn LaFontaine, the ceramicist down here, Earl Eder, Billy Souza, war soldier, Delmar Bonai, Larry Alcana, Greg Cahoe, Linda Loma Hafdewa, Dan Naminga. And so this wall is the anchor of the exhibition. because it really talks about the Institute of American Indian Arts. And the Institute was a breeding ground for creativity. At the beginning, we talked about Lloyd Givenu, the co-founder. And so he was influenced by people like George Morrison and Oscar Howe, who really created an opportunity for changing traditional painting to something contemporary and modern in the times. And Lloyd built upon that. He gave all these students materials, canvas and painting, which they never had access to. He gave them teachers like Fritz Scholder and Alan Hauser and Neil Parsons to help broaden their mind and to learn about art history and modern practices. And he gave them freedom to practice in the way that they saw it. And these artists all overlapped and influenced each other. You see here, you see elements of Fritz Scholder in the face here, as well as here in this ceramic. This is like the Fritz Scholder of ceramics, but it's not. It's Glenn LaFontaine. And then over here, this Billy Souza. You see TC Canyon Cloud, these stripes. You see those same stripes right here. All of these artists were working and influencing each other at the exact same time. It's incredibly interesting. There's a much larger narrative there, but I just want to touch upon it a little bit. We continue. David Romero is thinking about Mimbres pottery as well as pop culture, comic book culture. Here you see very traditional designs on the exterior and the outlining the rim of the bowl, but then you have this figure just leaping over these buildings. And so that's a bit of an alter ego of himself even. He's bigger than life and he can fly when he's able to practice and to create. Here we have David Bradley. David Bradley is a really celebrated artist here in the Southwest as well as in Santa Fe, and his landscapes are highly desirable. Here's, you see Santa Fe actually written in the background, and these mountains with a face. You have these great planes flying up, the rain kind of almost horizontal. And then whenever you look at his landscapes, you just keep digging and you see more and more and more. Here you see that Willie Nelson's actually playing at the casino tonight. And there's just like a lot of content. And then the water just moves beautifully into this work by Jean Quick-to-See Smith. And although Jean Quick-to-See Smith was not a part of the Institute of American Indian Arts, she, along with all these other artists, were highly influenced by it. It was a moment in the 20th century that really just opened people's eyes. And so Jean Quick-to-See Smith has this great trade canoe, and she's known for these trade canoes, and they're just littered with content. There's a robot, there's I don't even know. There's some priest on a horse, there's a totem pole, there's a rabbit, there's an elk, there's an American flag, there's everything that kind of goes into this mixture of culture and colonialism and heritage and ancestry. She's just the cat's meow. I love her work. There's actually going to be a retrospective of her work in 2023 at the Whitney in New York, so definitely you want to be aware of that and attend it if you're in New York at all. Here we move on to an artist named James Lavador. He's a landscape artist and he just does abstraction in a totally unique way. I really love his work. Richard Glazer Dene is a Mohawk artist from New York. He grew up in Coney Island actually. And this painting by him is called Columbus. And he's talking about colonialism. He's also talking about Indian boarding schools. Here you see in this negative space, it's fulfilled up here. And you have a toy school bus, and inside of that toy school bus are toy Indians, and they're all red, like they're bloodied. And so this is a very powerful piece around serious topics of tragedy and reality for Native people and for America, and not even just art history, but history. And he's able to do it in a subtle way, but to have dialogue and discourse about our past, which is incredibly important. This artist is not as subtle. Edgar Heap of Birds is known for doing these monographs with messages that are really potent. Here we have an artist named Rick Bartow. I love Rick Bartow's work because he talks about transformation. Transformation is one of my favorite components of Native American art. And here you have a figure, and there's all this action and activity, and it transforms into this bird figure, and there's more activity, and here is this line with a little circle on top that delineates and talks about spirit, and it has to do with ourselves, the things we can see, the things we cannot see, it has to do with animals, it has to do with transformation. So I want to talk about transformation over here. This is my favorite wall in the entire exhibition. Here we have a sculpture by artist John Hoover. And John Hoover, he was Aleutian up in Alaska, and he's depicting a creation story. And here we have Volcano Woman in the center in red. The head, the arms, the breasts, the body, the torso, all the way down. And in her womb, you see first people. And the story goes that the cormorants, these birds on the side, they flew down into the volcano. And they retrieved the seeds from Volcano Woman's womb. And those seeds represented the first peoples. And then these cormorants flew to all the islands in the entire archipelago and dispersed the seeds. And that's how first people came about. This piece also has a seal up on top with the fins. And it's all about transformation. Animal, humanity, mythology, all intertwining in harmony. On either side of John Hoover's Volcano Woman are works by Preston Singletary. He's a famous glass sculptor. He's Tlingit, also up in Alaska. And here you see the raven, and then you see a shaman. And this is called form line design. It's a very traditional technique that's only found in the Northwest coast, and it has to do with positive and negative space to create figures and iconography. And they're always intertwining and overlapping. And so that's a type of transformation. But even more inherent in these artworks is the fact that they're glass. And that means that sand was heated, it was turned into molten glass, and then it was molded, which in and of itself is a form of transformation. So he's just a very heady guy who does highly refined artwork, and you can find him just about anywhere, in any major institution. He's got touring exhibitions. He's a really beautiful artist. And then we continue. We have an artist named Terence Guardipe, and he's working in traditional ledger style. Ledger style is a style on the plains. When the military went out into the plains, they would give ledger books, military ledger books in colored pencil to artists, to natives. And these native people would recount their conquests or their wars or whatever was important at the moment. And then there are these books that you could see online or in museums. And so this piece is actually on a ledger from the state of Montana in 1894. He also collaged on Special Improvement District coupon bonds, war ration books, and he's Blackfoot, so he has a wonderful depiction of a courting scene here in his traditional Blackfoot culture. And then here we have a fantastic artist named Cara Romero. I love her, I call her fantastic. I've said the word fantastic probably too many times, but I like superlatives, and it really works for her. Right now, I just came from a panel on the plaza in Santa Fe, and she was talking about, I think the panel was titled Envisioning the Next 100 Years. And so Cara's very often talking about Native identity in the moment, but she's always including tradition and where people come from. So this is actually her daughter, and she's wearing traditional garments. This was taken in the Pacific Ocean, and this has to do with photography, modernism, tradition, and pure beauty. The last two pieces in the exhibition are here. This canvas is done by an artist named Alex Jean-Pierre. He's Ojibwe, he's up in Canada. And Alex is a national treasure up in Canada. He's in every major institution. And like George Morrison and Oscar Howe, he also, in the mid-century, was doing something totally unique, and he was using abstraction to voice his own artistic ability. And you see a face in here, you see avian creatures, and there's all movement and color. It's a beautiful, beautiful work. Below it, we're going to finish with a sculpture by Alan Hauser. And I'd like to finish with this sculpture because it has to do with Native philosophy, with the upper world, represented by the eagle, and the lower world, represented by the cat or the cougar or the panther. And the underwater panther is the lower world. And so you have these symbols of the upper world and the lower world, and then we reside in the middle realm, right? And there's conflict there. And it's all about conflict within ourselves, within the world around us. But what happens in that conflict is we can create harmony and we can create peace. And it's our job here to do that. And I think that's a beautiful way to end this exhibition, because there's a lot of work to do and a lot of progress. And I think we can learn a lot by looking forward through the past. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you weren't able to see the exhibition. I hope you can see something similar in the future. Thank you.